Hey Revolutionaries, I'm excited to bring you this week's episode with Bryan Clayton, where we're talking landscaping and software. That's right, landscaping and software. I know they don't seem to go together, but when Bryan gets involved, for sure they do. He's got a great story of how he started out a landscaping business in high school while he was a kid. His father turned him on to it, and he wasn't really super excited about it when he first started, but his father was like, hey, the neighbors need their lawn cut, let's go. And trying to give his son, something to do, something productive to do. But once he realized, hey, I could do this work and I get paid, and that's interesting. So it kind of caught his imagination a little bit. And by the time he graduated college, working his business all through those years, he took 1 or 2 extra years to get through college because he was taking classes slowly while he was running his business. He realized, hey, I'm making 6 figures here. I got a couple employees, and even though he studied business in college, it didn't teach him anything more so than what he was learning on the job, so to speak. And so he just stuck with his business, never got a job, and he turned that initial business he started in high school into a $10 million, 150-employee company that he sold off to a larger organization eventually. Amazing story. But didn't stop there, and he thought, okay, what's my next act? What do I do next? And he stayed in the landscaping niche and basically has now created the Uber/Doordash app of landscaping. It's a great story. It's an amazing piece of software that he's put together. So I can't wait for everyone out there to listen to this episode. But before we get there, real quick, I wanted to mention that I know what you're thinking. I know exactly what you're thinking. Everyone who's listening right now, I know. You're thinking, finally, another JJRR episode has dropped. Finally. I know you were waiting for it. And I know it's been a little bit of a few weeks of a hiatus here, but as I mentioned in the kickoff episode for this year, 2024, that, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. I feel like this year, just opening up this year has just gone a little bit slower and is going a little bit slower than how earlier years normally things happen, and so hey, I'm gonna finish strong. But I know some of the episodes have been delayed, but I've been busy, a little bit sick here and there, and it just seemed like I wanted things to kind of come to me this time rather than pushing on things. But I have a big announcement. So, anyways, thanks for hanging in there, listening, everyone, and still checking out the episodes. First of all. But I have a big announcement for everybody. If you haven't seen it yet, and this was part of my travels going to Asia and part of conversations that basically came out of Podfest this year at the end of January. So one of my big clients, MGS Global, their CEO and founder, is also a friend of mine, colleague, and also a podcaster, and I got her to go down to Podfest this year, and of course I knew Chris Krimitsos, the founder of Podfest, who's an amazing dude, amazing event organizer. And I knew something could happen if those two people met. They met up here on the Podfest tour initially, I think, in last December, or maybe last November. I can't remember, around Thanksgiving. Anyways, so we get on site there. I are walking around. Chris texts us, and all of a sudden we're in a meeting talking about how to bring Podfest to Asia. And we're standing around with 2 of the big influencers that are actually going to be there in Manila May 8th. I'll tell you more about that in a second. Coming up May 8th. Just from a conversation, a chance meeting, and a few weeks later, we're on an organizing team organizing the first ever Podfest Expo brand conference in Asia. And it's happening in Manila May 8th, this May 8th, right? It's a one-day conference. And so it's amazing what can happen when you have a vision and you bring people together. And these people are just super growth mindset. They make quick decisions. They understand who they're talking to and what can happen when you meet the right people, So it's happening. And so that was part of, why I ended up going to the Philippines while I was in Asia, which I wasn't going to this time around during the winter, and that kind of led to me getting a little bit sick on the last week of my trip, and I've been kind of fighting this hacking cough for a few weeks here now since I've been back. But hey, c'est la vie. This was still super fun to go. But I was while I was in Manila, I got to see MGS Global's, not Manila, while I was in Cebu, in the Philippines. I was able to see MGS Global new offices over there. They're doing great things. And when we got back, Aya had me as on her podcast that she's setting up a new brand for her podcast called Architect My Business, which I might throw that episode down the feed here on JJRR so you can hear what's going on there. But I was honored to be her first guest on her new Architect My Business podcast. Anyways, the reason I'm mentioning that is she's one of the lead sponsors of the Podfest Expo that's coming up, Podfest Asia it's being called. Go to podfestasia.com if you'd like to attend. And for you listening out there exclusively here on listening to JJRR episodes, I have a discount code for you. So you can go to podfestasia.com, click to buy tickets to Podfest Asia if you want to go, and it'll take you to the Eventbrite site. That's the engine they're using to sell tickets. And if you just put in the discount code JimJim into the little window. Oh, hold on. Sorry. Okay, pardon the interruption there. I had my other tracks were on, bleeding over into the mic. Anyways, if you go to the little discount window code in Eventbrite and just type in JimJim, JIM, it will take 15% off your ticket price. So any digital nomad folks I know out there that are already in Asia or people that are traveling that way and want to pop into Manila for a day to a podcast conference, go check it out. It should be cool. And I'm excited, and I'll be there. So that's that, and also don't forget about if you're looking for more focus and getting things done and getting back on track and just feeling better, feeling more productive. Don't forget about Magic Mind. So my discount code is still out there for Magic Mind, magicmind.com/Jim Cirillo, JIMCIRILLO. Give it a shot. It's the world's first productivity shot. And just dig it. That's all I can tell you about it. I'm sure you've heard about it before. I'm sure you've listened to other episodes where I've talked about it before, so I'm not going to go on about it today. But check it out. It's still out there, and it still really works. So Magic Mind, podfestasia.com. JimJim is the discount code if you're going to head out there. But right now, let's get to Bryan's episode. It's amazing what he's been doing with Greenpal.com. So here we go.
Welcome to JimJim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, the show that explores reinvention in the digital age as it relates to career, creativity, and technology. Stay tuned for interviews with professionals, entrepreneurs, and creatives that have reimagined success and are making a pivot. If you'd like to listen to the entire back catalog, visit JimJim'sReinventionRevolution.com for instant access. And now, here's your host, JimJim.
Let's get going. You ready?
Rock and roll.
Hey, everybody. Hey, this is JimJim. Welcome to episode 113 of JimJim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. And I'm talking today with Bryan Clayton, and we're talking about landscaping and software. Yeah, that's right. Landscaping and software. I'm not sure why or how that goes together, but Bryan's going to tell us about it. So, Bryan, welcome to the Reinvention Revolution.
Jim, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on, man.
Well, I can't wait to get into it with you. But before we dive in, I have one question for you. So today, like when this gets released, it'll be kind of, a little recent history here. But today is Eclipse Day. Are you doing anything special for the eclipse, or are you in the path of totality? I'm in the path of totality. Just FYI.
I'm like in the path of 95% totality. So
Okay.
I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. So
Okay.
so we're gonna get to see it. Yeah, my family's getting together, and my brother's got some little kids, and so we're gonna enjoy it together as a family. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, okay. Oh, it'll be fun. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be crazy or not. We have some clouds right now in the morning up here. Hopefully they'll burn off, and we'll
Yeah,
get a
same
nice
thing
look at
here
it,
in Tennessee, man. I'm hoping that it gets sunny because come on, man.
Right.
Come on. This happens like once every 30 or 40 years.
Exactly,
Come on. Give me a sunny day.
Exactly. Well, speaking of the sun and everything outdoors and things that make grass grow, you are in the landscaping business, and you've put together this company that I've been seeing numbers around. Maybe you can give everybody a sort of top-down view of what Greenpal is, how big the company is, like the revenues and what you're doing, and how it's sort of the Uber / Doordash of landscaping now, and I'll explain that in a second what I mean by that. But tell me about it first.
That's right. Yeah. Greenpal is a platform that connects people that need lawn mowing services, homeowners that need their grass cut, with professionals that do that service, with professionals that make their living in the lawn mowing business.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like DoorDash or Instacart or Uber, but for lawn care services. So normally how you would get this service done, if you needed a grass cutting service, you would just go to Google and you would type lawn mowing service near me, and you would just dial for dollars. Or maybe you would go to Facebook or Yelp or ask a friend or something like that.
Right.
And then you would manually get estimates and manually try to get somebody to take care of this service for you. With Greenpal, you just put your address in. You instantly get competitive quotes from lawn care services nearby you. Essentially, these services are competing over your business. And then you hire the one you want to work with right through the platform. You put your credit card in, and they bill you for the service after they're done, and then you're pleased with the work. And then if you liked how they did, you just set it and forget it. It just happens like magic in the background. So you go from not knowing anybody with 4 feet tall grass to getting it done in a matter of hours.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. And I was thinking about my when I think about landscaping services. So I had a duplex that I owned. I just sold recently, but I moved to a new neighborhood, and so I've always had a challenge of finding the right people. Then you find a great guy, and then it's like all of a sudden he moves or he stops his business or whatever, and it's like my go-to usually has been just word of mouth from neighbors, because I never had great success searching on Google.
Yeah,
you know
totally.
what I mean? I searched on Google, and you find a bunch of scammy ads or whatever, that come up first. And then you find a few maybe legit people, but some of those guys or some of those businesses out there, whether it's a guy or a girl, these landscaping businesses don't necessarily have their own websites, right?
Right.
Okay, so this is one of my questions for you in terms of how you set up the marketplace and how big or small an organization you have to be as a business owner to be part of the platform. Do you need to have a website, or can you be as like an independent contractor guy that, hey, I do this, but I have like 2 guys that work for me. I don't have a website. I do word of mouth. I'm a neighborhood guy. Can you be on the platform?
Very, 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 really astute observation, because that's exactly how it plays out. That's exactly how this gets done normally.
Exactly.
You would ask friends and family for how this. You would ask friends and family for recommendation, and you would maybe get a price or two. And you don't really know if this is the best price and reliability in the marketplace. You hope that maybe the guy shows up,
right?
And
you
kind of just hope for the best. Yeah. And then to your point, if you search on Google, the first 2 pages are going to be Angie's List, Home Advisor, a bunch of ads. It's going to be Yelp. Right. It's going to be Thumbtack. It's going to be True Green, ChemLawn, and a bunch of national companies. And then maybe you might see a couple of landscaping companies in there, but those are the big guys in town. They don't really do residential lawn mowing. And then if you do get a smaller mom and pop, the odds are they're full because they popped up on Google. And so you're left with this like manual process that inevitably is not going to get the lawn mowed. And so that's what Greenpal is set up for. It's almost like a search engine in itself for just lawn mowing. So and really the sweet spot is these solo operators, because they don't have a web presence. They don't have a website. They don't have an online presence set up. And so that's what Greenpal's job is to kind of modulate them, help them set up a place where they can do business and say, okay, this is who I am. These are my services. This is how much they cost. And then you can hire me off the shelf, so to speak.
Right.
And then that's kind of where it starts. It's also a place for them to accumulate signals and past track record about how good their business is. And so, for example, because the transactions happen through the platform, in a sense that we're able to measure how often do they show up on time. If they're supposed to be there every Thursday, how often do they show up every Thursday? And so then they're assigned a score, and we call that a reliability rating.
I gotcha.
And so then as a consumer, you can see, with actual data. These are the reliable services, and these are the not so reliable services. And then you can make a better informed hiring decision on who you want to work with. And then we also have star review ratings and some other ratings, like an ongoing rating. How often do they get booked for a third, fourth, and fifth visit? That's a strong indicator of were people happy with their service or not. So because we're able to close the loop on these transactions, we're able to gather all of this rich information around who's taking this service seriously, who's running a good small business, and who isn't. And that enables the consumer to get this kind of Amazon-like, Uber-like, Doordash-like experience.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I definitely could see on the consumer side that this data visibility is there now. Like, oh, yeah, this is reliable. I see the reviews, whatever. Maybe it makes you feel more comfortable, at least gives you a higher percentage of picking the right service the first time around. But on the backside, on the business side or the operator side, you said something interesting. They're able to get data and statistics about themselves. So if I'm running my own landscape business, I can see like, yeah, I'm doing well or I'm not doing well, or there's more. What else? What other data, if I was a business owner, would I be able to see on the platform?
Yeah, nobody teaches us how to run a small business.
Right, that's
We're
right.
not taught how to run a small business in high school. Even if we go to business college, we're not taught how to run a small business. We're taught all of these nebulous concepts around how to run a kind of maybe one day be a manager in a cog at a big business. But we're not taught the nuts and bolts of how to run a small business. And so it's kind of Greenpal's job to be a coach in their pocket and teach them, okay, this is what it means to be proactive and not reactive. And so what we mean by that is if it's going to rain tomorrow, this is what it means to let all of your customers know you're not going to be there and to reschedule everybody.
I see.
And if you can't make it, this is what it means to be proactive and let them know that you're not going to be able to make it. Or if you can't take care of the job, this is what it means to be proactive and communicate what the expectations should be around that customer's job, and not just canceling and leaving them hanging.
I see. Okay.
And all sorts of things. The list goes on and on and on about kind of I guess you could say the bad behavior of small business owners that just don't know any better. Nobody teaches a small business owner that, hey man, you got to call people back within an hour, not 3 days. You gotta show up when you say you're going to show up. You got to honor your commitments. You have to do a good, thorough job in order to be successful in small business. And as simple as these concepts sound, we're not taught these things.
Right.
Greenpal these aren't our contractors. This is not like a general contractor subcontractor relationship, but Greenpal is there to kind of guide them towards success, because if they're successful, the platform is successful, and so kind of nudge them in the right direction. And for the ones that are good, they understand that, they excel, they prosper. For the ones that just don't take it seriously, and an example of that might be, I've got 20 stops today, and I just don't feel like doing them, so I'm not going to communicate with any of my clients, and I'm not going to do them, and I'm not going to do them tomorrow, and I'm not going to do them the next day. That contractor would get demoted and in some cases expelled from the platform, and ordinarily the consumer would just like have to be left hanging in that instance. But Greenpal is a system to help kind of course correct and fix these things that inevitably will happen in this kind of service-based business.
Right. Oh, that's cool. Well, so that's one of your intentions, is kind of raising the bar in terms of the industry, or sort of the expectations, or maybe training people even. That's pretty interesting. I was thinking that, as a small business, you may want to do those things, but if you're overwhelmed, and it's like, if that means, 27, actual physical calls that you have to sit down and make and dial each everybody's numbers and find the numbers and make sure you have the numbers saved in your phone and all that stuff, the logistics of that is a pain in the butt when it just decides to have a downpour on the, at noon on a Thursday. You're like, dang it,
That's right. That's right.
But this platform, it gives you that. That's what when I was thinking about this, it's the Uber. It's sort of a marketplace that connects people for the service, but it gets this other level of communication and status that sort of like a Doordash is like, hey, I'm late, or what I was looking at your website, this is why I thought about Doordash, is that, hey, we do the job, we take a picture, we send it to you. Like, you can remotely manage things if you're a consumer, but also as the contractor, it gives you this other communication, sort of back and forth communication links, right?
That's right. It's the platform's job to look at all of the things that suck about running a landscaping business, and maybe there's 100 of them an hour, or 1,000 a day,
right?
and trying to cut those in half.
Yeah,
we're not going to be able to solve for all of them,
right,
but trying to resolve all of them. So in the instance of rescheduling, making that as easy and seamless and one touch of a button as possible, or in the instance of accounts receivable and getting paid on time from their customers, how do we make that simple? Well, the workflow is as such on a rolling basis. When you get done with a property, you need to take a picture, upload that, send that to your customer. The customer approves it, or if they do nothing, their card is billed within 24 hours. And that means on a rolling basis, these transactions are reconciled. They're either paid or dealt with on a rolling basis. And that solves a big problem in the landscape service professional's life of accounts receivable.
Right.
Because every pro, when they get home at night, they're having to do bookkeeping of mailing out invoices and figuring out who owes them money, and getting upset because they have like 60, 90, 120 days of accounts receivable. Well, Greenpal solves that problem for them by giving them a system to interact with, and using their merchant account, they can bill on a rolling basis and not get behind and not have this accounts receivable issue. So solving the pain points that make it suck to run a lawn mowing business, improving their livelihood, helping them make more money, and then teeing them up so consumers can hire them off the shelf is how kind of the whole thing works.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. I'm just thinking, I think I need to start a landscaping business.
It's funny.
It sounds like, man, it sounds so easy now. I mean, all the tools that we have and these new tools that you're bringing to the party, it's like, it's really got to be phenomenal for some of the people that have been doing the business and doing it the hard way, or the harder way, right?
It's so funny. I think we're going to start seeing a reversion to blue collar trades, in terms of people, maybe high school kids not going to college and going into trades, or people who went and got a liberal arts degree and realizing that now I'm 200 grand in student loan debt, and this degree gives me a $40,000 a year job. I got to do something.
Right.
We have contractors that use the platform to run their business, making over $1 million a year off of the business they get through the platform. And so
absolutely.
It's incredible. It's in the case of the blue collar millionaire, where the guy with the Carhartt jacket and the dusty overalls, riding around in a $150,000 pickup truck, with a bunch of real estate all over town and rental properties and farmland and assets and stuff. I love that story. And so in some small way, Greenpal gets to help participate and help people start off on that journey, because that's what we're here for.
Right. Well, I think it's just it's useful, it's fruitful. It's just these different opportunities that are popping up that are tech-based. The internet's here, and we can communicate in different ways and connect in different ways. I just think it's phenomenal. So that's part of what the podcast is always about, is this way to look at the world differently, is to reinvent ourselves in these different ways. In terms of the overall business, how long has this business been around? And what's like roughly how many customers do you have on the platform? Can you give us some numbers? Like I saw some numbers out there to $20 million, $30 million revenue business. Can you give us some insight into how this has been growing?
Yeah, so Greenpal is a 10-year overnight success. Okay. My two co-founders and I started this really in 2012, so more than 10 years ago. Okay. It's crazy how fast this goes by, but
right.
And so it took us
3 or 4 COVID years. It was like,
yeah,
it was like,
that was a blink.
Oh, yeah, blink.
Yeah, it took us 4 or 5 years just to figure out how to make the marketplace work well. And what I mean by that is we stayed just in Nashville, Tennessee, where we're from, to figure out, okay, if 100 people used it, how do we make 99 of them happy? And when we started, if 10 people used it, 9 were pissed off. And so we had to figure out how do we solve for all of the ways that the experience breaks down and that we have these negative outcomes.
Yeah.
And that took a long time, just little by little triaging around why does this go wrong. It could be one of 100 things. The lawnmower was too big for the backyard fence gate, or the guy left the fence open, or the grass was too tall, or his lawnmower blades were dull, or he just didn't show up, or he wouldn't honor his price, or they didn't get any bids. They got too many bids. You name it. It's a million things that can go wrong. So we stayed just in Nashville for 3 or 4 years, and then slowly began expanding out city by city in the U.S. Now we're nationwide in the U.S. Around 300,000 people using it every week to get lawn mowing done. Around $30 million a year in revenue that service providers are powered through the system. And then what else can I share? 35,000 contractors around the United States using it to grow their lawn business.
Okay.
And we take a small transactional commission based on the revenue that contractors get through the platform. Is how we operate the business.
I gotcha. Yeah. Oh, really cool, man. Okay, well, thanks. That gives me some idea of the scale, and I just want to demonstrate that you are now this tech co-founder and CEO. And that's super interesting, but people might not realize, your background. So I want to kind of rewind or figure out where this all came from. Okay, because you weren't a guy that came out of school. At least my impression, you can tell me different. That came out of school, college, MBA degree, and all that kind of stuff. Sounds like when you first started out, you were a pretty hands-on type of guy. So tell me about how your past experience before you got into software and technology. What were you doing?
Yeah, I actually, so my first business was a landscaping business. I started mowing grass in high school. My dad actually made me mow my first yard. He got tired of watching me play Nintendo and
really?
said, hey, I talked to the neighbor and they need somebody to mow the yard, and he volunteered me for the job. And
Good
I
for him.
remember
Good for him, man. Good for him.
I mowed the yard and made like $20, and
yeah.
I thought, this is awesome. I'm just going to do more of this. And
so you liked it right away. You were like, hey, this is cool.
No, I did not. No, this was not something I did voluntarily.
Oh, okay.
I did not want to go over there and mow the yard. But my dad was a military guy, and this was a direct order. And
yes, sir.
And,
okay.
But he did. To his credit, he did go over there with me, and I don't know that he actually helped me mow it, but he kind of like guided me along and pointed out the things I was missing. And,
I gotcha, yeah.
And then we did quality control after we were done. And
you did really? That's funny.
Yeah. So which still is a value that sticks with me now, 30 years later.
Right.
But so I hated going over there. Didn't want to do it. But when I got paid, that part I loved, and so I thought, this is awesome.
I see.
Like a light bulb went off, and I thought I was able to make the connection of I could sell services and make money, and then this is incredible. I'm just going to do more of this.
Okay.
So
wow, that's interesting. And how old were you at this point? How old were you?
Probably 14 or 15.
Okay.
And the first thing I did, we had this old school desktop computer. Went to Microsoft Works. Word was the good one you had to buy. So went to Works.
Right. I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Works was the free one, and so made up a really crappy flyer.
Yep.
And printed off, emptied out the Hewlett Packard inkjet cartridge, and printed out probably 100 flyers and started handing them out around the neighborhood. And I think I got 10 customers that first summer.
Wow,
and
not bad.
And so I was just going around mowing yards, and I just did that, rinse and repeat, kept growing it year over year. And then when I went to college, I didn't want to take on a bunch of student loan debt, so I just funded my college tuition and books just by mowing grass. I would mow
so
yards all day.
You paid for your own college because of that business already. Was making enough money.
And
That's
and
very
so
interesting.
that was helpful. I didn't have to take on a bunch of student loan debt. And
Love
so, But it took me like 7 years because I would go to school at night and mow grass all day.
Okay.
And my classmates hated me because I would come to class with grass clippings all over me and it was smelling like gasoline.
Yeah,
and
right.
Stuff. And so
Like,
I remember
this guy? That's not your average college student. That's not the average.
Right,
college
right.
student.
No, I was not like in a fraternity or going to parties or anything. This was not a very typical college experience, but
Yeah.
it had to be done. And yeah, so but I remember one time I was in like a business class and I looked down and after the lecture was done, it was like a 3-hour class. I looked down, the entire like floor around me was covered in grass clippings from crap that just fell off me during the 3 hours. It was so embarrassing. But anyway, like that was my college experience. But got that done, took 7 years. So at that time I was like 24, 25, and I was graduating college and I had to make a decision. At that point I had grown the business to maybe 3 employees, 4 employees, and maybe a couple $100,000 a year in revenue. And I thought, man, what am I going to do now? I don't really want to go get a job. And this stuff I learned in business school seems like bullcrap to me because it doesn't really apply to what I just spent getting my business going.
Yeah, you're running a real business and seeing real revenues, and you're like, that's real business. How does this school match up to it?
It didn't make sense to me, and so I thought I didn't feel confident that I could just go out there and replace the salary I was making running my business because I was doing pretty good. I was making over 6 figures take home in 2003 as a 23-year-old kid.
Yeah,
so I was doing really good, and so I thought I don't really want to be a lawn guy my whole life, but man, I think this could be my lane. I think I could just build a big business in this. And so I took what little I did learn in business school, made a business plan on like a yellow legal pad. And I thought, okay, I've got me and 2 helpers. If I could do that 5 more times with 5 crews, and then I could manage those, and then I could do sales, and then maybe if I could get a sales guy, and I could do these other 2 things where I could do installations, maybe I could get this to, I don't know, maybe $2 million a year in sales. And I was able to kind of like map back to what a real business would look like.
Wow, interesting.
And I thought if I could do that in 5 years, it'll all be worth it.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question here. So I'm just curious, like, where does this entrepreneurial sort of vision come from? So your dad was in the military. Was he more of a business-minded person?
No, I was the first one in my family.
Any brothers and sisters that are in businesses?
No, I didn't have any evidence.
That's interesting.
From them, from my family.
Yeah.
Now, without my dad, I wouldn't have ever started because he made me. He made me go mow the neighbor's yard. So I wasn't like born as an entrepreneur. I was forced into it. So there was that.
Right.
But and then they also my mom and dad, their parenting style. We grew up middle class, but they were really good around not giving me everything I wanted. They were really good around getting me to understand that, hey, you got soccer season coming up. We're going to buy you the $20 pair of cleats.
Yeah. And
if you want the $100 pair of cleats, you're going to have to go out and get that money.
Right.
And so that was a really good parenting style, man. Because I better go hustle up that money. And same thing with my first car and so on.
That's cool,
I was able to connect the dots really quickly that if I wanted something, I had to go work for it. And so that worked well with that business. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that worked well with that business was I understood that if I could buy assets and equipment, I could make more money. So that's one cool thing about the lawn mowing business is it's you can invest in equipment and make more money. So you start off with a little $500 push mower, and you work your butt off, and you might be able to make $30 an hour. But if you have a $15,000 lawnmower, you can make $150 an hour. Sure. And so it's a really cool exercise in Business 101 around return on investment and capital investment. Right, sure. And it's a really neat exercise. And so I was doing that at the age of 19, growing this little lawn mowing business. So when I reached that tipping point of graduating college, I'm going to go. Do I want to be a lawn guy? Do I not? It was very much an exercise of back of the envelope math and realizing that I didn't have talents in anything else and that nobody was going to pay me a salary that I was making mowing people's yards already.
Certainly not right out of school at that point. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that it was going to be 3 or 4 years before I was able to replace what I was making at that moment.
For sure.
And I thought, well, I'll be damned. I know this is not glamorous, and I know I smell like gasoline and grass clippings right now as I'm writing this on this notepad. but at least I have a trajectory, and I have a lane, and I can see where this would go in 10 years. And what I wrote down on that legal pad I thought would take 5, and I was able to do it in 2.
Wow. Okay.
And just by really hustling, and ultimately grew that business to $10 million a year in sales, and 150 employees. Yeah, so it grew to not like a humongous company, but a pretty good sized small business, and it was acquired by a big national company that has thousands of employees that operated in that industry.
That's interesting.
And then after that, I took some time off. I had enough proceeds from the sale to kind of not live lavishly, but live a comfortable middle-class lifestyle with not having to worry about money anymore. Mm-hmm. And so then I could figure out what I really wanted to do. And I thought, what do I really want to do? And I watched the movie The Social Network, and I thought, that looks cool. They're running this tech business. Mm-hmm. They're touching millions of people with what they built. Maybe I could do that. What should I do in that world? And I thought, well, I know this industry that I've spent 15 years in. Maybe I could build a marketplace that makes this work better. And it was very much naivete as an asset. I didn't know how challenging it was to build a marketplace, to execute on the technology, but just got started.
So what kind of technology were you using in your current business? So you spent, what you said, maybe 10 years to build that up, that your first business, or what? I'm sure you were using software and Office, Microsoft Office, and the business applications, stuff like that. Was there any other competitors out there that you tried using while you were running that previous business? What was
at
out
the time? So we're talking 1998 to 2012.
Yeah.
And so
and this is before Uber and stuff. So some of these marketplaces weren't really conceptually
didn't exist. I mean, this is right at the dawn of cloud software. So to answer your question, the short answer is it was all spreadsheets, very manual data entry, very manual. Okay, here's a paperwork order. What did you do? Did you get it done? Okay, let's bill the client. Let's type all that into QuickBooks. Let's mail them an invoice. Let's get the check back. Let's put the payment in. It was very manual. Right. What took 5 people to work that workflow could be done with 1 person or less today. Mm-hmm. And so nowadays there's off-the-shelf software for all of those functions.
Right.
But back then it was very much spreadsheets and QuickBooks. That was it. That was all that existed. There were some landscaping industry platforms that theoretically you could run your landscaping business on top of, but they were so rigid that they were just so hard to use that they weren't worth us. We tried. They weren't worth adopting.
I got you.
Nowadays, looking back and then teaching myself how to write software and how to build software, I'm kicking myself in the butt almost daily, looking at how much money and I was left on the table in my former life, and then also how much headache I could have saved myself by automating and streamlining many, many, many processes that we did by hand manually.
Oh, I see.
Or people that we paid to do things that could have been abstracted away with software and automated. Especially nowadays with AI, it's crazy.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're offering some of that service now, but it's a different business model. You're doing the marketplace, but. Yeah,
totally.
Oh my gosh, it's interesting. I just want to put some context around that because that's very interesting to think about when all these ideas are not obvious yet. It's like he had this vision of hey, I want to help the industry learn at this, kind of make these efficiencies happen, but it's not so clear back then how obviously you would approach it necessarily, right?
Yeah, it was like the idea I was certain would work, but the approach of how to build it, I had no idea. So it was like the vision and how I saw the future did not change, but the execution on how to get there was all wrong, and the assumptions on how to bring that to life were all wrong. And so I think that's true of a lot of like the idea of this pivot or the idea of iterating your way to success is kind of like that. You see something broken in the real world, you know it should run smoother, and that almost doesn't change. But the way you get there does. And that's how it was for us. I knew somebody was going to build this because I saw it every day, because in running my landscaping business, we would get 100 phone calls a day.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Will you mow my business? Well, I mean, will you mow my yard?
Yeah.
Will you mow my yard? Will you mow my yard? And we didn't do residential lawn mowing. And because we grew the business to a point where we no longer offered that basic like mow and blow service. And so we would refer out those calls to a list of names and phone numbers we had by the phone. We had a value in running that business to always be helpful no matter what. Sure. And so we would refer those calls out. And then those people would call us back. Hey, I called all 5. Nobody called me back. And so okay, here's another 5. And then I called those 5 and I hired one, but he never showed up.
Right.
And these people we personally knew. So it's kind of like,
okay, you're like,
and so we saw how broken the whole thing was, and I knew how broken it was, and I knew that there was people that needed this service, and that there was 1,000 guys that wanted it, but there was just no efficient way for them to communicate surface pricing, schedule each other, pay each other. And somebody was going to build that network.
Right.
And I knew that was going to happen. What I didn't know was how, and I didn't know if I could, but I just didn't give up, and we just kept working on it.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's dig into the I could part for a second here. So that's where one of the things I wanted to get to, because it doesn't sound like you just went out and hired, a technical guy and they did all the work and you just sat around and kind of said yes, no. I mean, it sounds like you kind of had to really dive in to understand the software technical part. Tell me about that journey, or this idea. I mean, it's kind of a bold idea to think that you could jump into this lane, really, and do this advanced kind of product development process, which we talked about a little bit offline when we first got connected. Kind of some of the learnings that you discovered during that process, and what you had to develop within yourself.
It was very much, I was naive to all of it. I didn't know what I didn't know. Had I known how hard it was going to be, I never would have done it. I just would have. I had enough from the first business when I sold it that I didn't have to work anymore. I just would have invested in real estate and just and done something else with my life. So I never would have done it. So luckily, I didn't know how hard it was going to be. So I think sometimes that naivete is really an asset. And,
absolutely,
and so thank God I didn't know, because now here I am 10, 12 years later, and I really enjoy running this thing. And it's fun, and it's growing, and hundreds of thousands of people are using it. So I was very lucky in a sense. But man, the first thing we did is we made a very critical mistake. We thought, my 2 co-founders and I, we thought we could outsource the development. We thought we could outsource the tech side of it. Ideally, when you want to start a new technical company like this, you get what Paul Graham calls a hacker and a hustler. So you get somebody that knows the tech side, and then you get somebody that knows the business side, and these two come together, and it's like 1 + 1 is 3.
Right.
Or 5,
right?
And the two come together, and it's like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Well, we had three hustlers. None of us knew how to code. None of us had None of us had ever built a website. None of us had ever attempted anything like this. We thought, well, we can just hire a development shop to build it, and we'll be off and going.
Right.
And that's what we did. And they took 9 months, and we spent $150,000 of our own money, and they delivered this thing to us, and it was just dead on arrival. It didn't have the features it needed. It was buggy.
Right.
It was hard to use. The scope, like, it was probably half our fault. And looking back, like, we didn't know what to tell them to build, and
of course.
so it was very much like a waterfall process, and it was just a stupid thing to even attempt. Looking back, it was kind of like trying to start a restaurant with no chef. It was like, you know, if you want to start a tech company, you have to have some kind of technical acumen at the core competency of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was dead, and we scrapped it, and then we realized, okay, we're going to have to learn how to build software. We're going to have to teach ourselves how to code. And my co-founder took I want to say he took $9,000 of his own money. He didn't have $9,000. He put $9,000 on a credit card and went to what was called the Nashville Software School.
Oh wow!
Okay. And so he went 5 days a week for 6 months, and then he was learning backend programming, and then he would he was rebuilding the entire thing on nights and weekends. And then I was learning on YouTube University how to become the world's worst front end engineer, or not even engineer, developer, front end developer. And so the two of us rebuilt the whole thing together. That took like another year or two for us to rebuild it and learn. And then at least then we had something we could iterate on top of, and something that we could that we knew how it was built, and we had the skills to kind of chart our own course after that, and then build the team out around us. And so I think, like, if you want to be in like the restaurant business, you're going to have to learn recipes. If you want to be in the music business, you're going to have to learn how to sing and play guitar. If you want to be in the tech business, you're going to have to learn how to code and develop.
Yeah. Well, it's just a great lesson of, of course, you don't know until you know. But yeah, you really need to have some depth of expertise to begin to even outsource it if you wanted to outsource it. Because otherwise, how do you manage those people? How do you know what the value is? How do you know what something should cost and how much time it should take? And otherwise you're just totally blind, and people take advantage of you, or you just don't get the right product in the end once it's built out, like you said.
That's right. You have to have some kind of acumen, that the Pareto principle, 80-20.
Right.
Like, you need to be able to. So the mistake we made is we delegated from a standpoint of abjuration. And what I mean by that is, I don't know how to do this. It scares me.
Right.
You handle it.
Right.
That always blows up in your face. You need to be able to delegate from a standpoint of stewardship. And so what I mean by that is, here's the scope. Here's how we want it done. Here's how we gauge success. Here's how long we know it should take. Here's how much we think it should cost within a range. Here's how we gauge quality. Here's how we want it done to match the existing things that we have. Here's how we decide if this was a success or not, and submit your application to see if you'll be a good fit, and then we'll decide if we want to work with you or not.
Right.
That's stewardship delegation. And in order to be able to delegate from a standpoint of stewardship, you kind of have to know what the hell it is you're talking about. Right. And you have to have the scars. And so I learned that lesson the hard way.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, because I think it's important for people to understand if they're trying to, do something different, or start a new business themselves, or just reinvent themselves career-wise, or whatever, or travel or move or to a different location. You got to just get the scars. You got to wrap your head around it, so you can get to that place, like you said, stewardship. I like that word. That's an interesting word. Well, look, Bryan, there's a few minutes left on the podcast, but before we get out of here, there's always a couple of questions I like to ask people. One of them is about technology. So it sounds like you weren't like a tech head out of school, but you dove headfirst right into it. How do you think about technology these days in terms of how do you stay open to learning new things, to embracing technology? And now we have AI coming on pretty strong that may affect things out there. How do you think about it? How are you able to keep your mind open to continue learning?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's very much like adapt and prosper or die kind of moment in time right now, I think. And
really is.
What I mean by that is think back like at a couple moments in time. it doesn't matter if you have a business or if you're an individual contributor. Like, let's just think back to like the 1970s, and if you were an architectural firm and you did blueprints, and then like CAD came along, and then like CAD completely revolutionized how blueprints were done. They were called blueprints because because like
because of how they were printed.
Right.
It
yeah.
It was like a blue hue. I think that's where the term came from.
Totally. And I think the blue was was easier to erase and kind of modify as you were making these things. And so like it was done by hand is my point. And like there were craftsmen that did these things by hand, and it was all done by hand. And then CAD came along where they could like do this stuff, on with a computer and like store it somewhere and reproduce it easier and like and start off on second base in many ways. And so like the architects that embraced that prospered. The ones that didn't, like it went like they went extinct. And so you kind of have to think like that's where we're at with AI with respect to design, content creation, if you're a lawyer, you need to be thinking about this, or like a paralegal. If you're a content creator, you need to be thinking about this. And so it's like, is it going to take you from like a 5 to a 10, or is it going to take you from a 5 to a 1? There is going to be no middle. It's going to make everybody exceptional or a 0. Yep. And so I think it can make you much better at what you're doing, or it can make you extinct. It's up to you as to how you decide to leverage it or not. And that goes for your small business as well. It's like I went to a chiropractor the other day, and the first thing I get there, and they hand me a clipboard with 7 pieces of paper I got to fill out with a big pen. And it's like,
wow,
man,
right?
This is 2024.
Right.
You should know all this about me already, and this should have been handled some way better with a digital interface or something before I even got here. And I know it's not going to make your business go out of business today, but in 5 years it will. And so you got to be thinking about like, how are you going to use technology to make the customer experience better and better for your small business? Don't be the chiropractor or the dentist or the hotel that gives a customer 5 pieces of paper and a big pen in 2024.
Right.
Use AI, use software as off the shelf to help automate those things. And so be thinking about that, because it's going to happen quick.
Yeah. Well, some good thoughts there. One other question I have for you is, in thinking about that, so you have to stay open to change. Things are moving fast, as we all know. What are you most urgent about right now? If you're kind of thinking about your business or the world maybe in general, like, what's urgent for you now? Like, I need to learn that, or I need to stop doing this, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, for me, it's like one of the Jeff Bezos quotes I like is he says, it's not the things. It's not. I don't really worry about what's going to change. I like to focus on the things that never change. And so what he means by that, and what he says is, I know my customers are going to want cheaper prices, and they're going to want more selection, and they're going to want faster delivery times. And so for us, we look at, okay, how do we make hiring a lawn care service quicker, faster, cheaper, more reliable? One of the biggest problems we still face is, why didn't the guy show up on Thursday when he was supposed to show up on Thursday? And trying to prevent that from happening. So it's like we look for how do we leverage this shift in technology to solve those same problems we spent a decade trying to make better and better. And I try to remind myself of, okay, what are the things that are never going to change? Well, our users, our customers are never going to want to pay more for a lawn mowing than they have to. They're never going to want to have to wait longer for service than they're going to have to. Contractors are never going to have to wait for their money longer than they have to. So we focus more on the fundamentals and how do we use more technology to make those fundamentals faster is what we do.
Interesting. I like that take. Yeah, maybe that can settle you down a little bit if you focus on the fundamentals, right?
Yeah, it's not like
versus
it's not
like the big jittery urgency. Like, what do I need to do? My God, the world's going crazy.
Well, be urgent about solving for the things that don't change. It's a weird paradox. It's like you have this opportunity with these new skills and new tools to apply to the things that don't change. It's like don't stick your head in the sand. Sticking your head in the sand would be not making improvements.
Right.
Sticking your head in the sand would say, oh, it's overhyped and whatever. It's a bubble. No, like you need to be anxious, but you don't want to have bright shiny object syndrome. So
that's right. Yeah.
So it's like it's a balance of both, and it's hard to do. Trust.
I gotcha.
It's hard to do in my business.
Right. Well, I got one final question for you, and that is, through all your travels, through all your journeys, your latest reinvention here, getting into the software business, what's a reinvention revelation you can share with everyone who might be starting out on their own journey or in the middle of their journey down this path of reinvention? What could you share about something that you learned about business or about yourself to kind of get you moving down the road?
Yeah, it's a few things. One is you should look back, if you're really trying to get a business going, you should look back 6 months, a year, 2 years, and you should be unrecognizable to yourself. You should have learned so many new things in the last 6 months or a year because you are in the trenches doing, learning, and testing and experimenting and then repeat. And you're like doing, learning, measuring, and then repeat. And like you should be unrecognizable. Like you should not recognize yourself from a year or two ago. And so that's how you know you're giving it your all. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is you don't have to have a title to do this stuff. When I was starting Greenpal, I thought, well, we're not engineers, so we're gonna have to go hire some engineers, and that was a stupid thing to think. I didn't need to have the title engineer to pop up YouTube and just spend 6 months, 7 days a week, consuming 10 hours a day, and then writing code that I could learn and rinse and repeat to learn how to do this stuff. And so that was a mistake on my part. So you don't have to have a title, and so that's the second thing. And then the third thing is to not believe your own BS. Like a lot of times we BS ourselves that, well, I didn't take those courses in college. I can't tell you how many people fall back on
I didn't major in that, whatever.
Right. And it's such a crutch. And it's so meaningless and pointless. Like, well, that wasn't my major. And it's like, oh man. So don't believe your own BS. So those are three things that I have noticed about myself in the last 10, 20 years of trying to get something
Well, thanks for sharing. Those are like nuggets of gold right there, man. Awesome
stuff. Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on your show. This has been fun.
Oh, it's been super fun, man. Well, if people are more interested in getting to learn more about you or checking out Greenpal, how would they connect with you? Where would you send them?
Yeah, so go to greenpal.com. You can sign up for free quotes, and you can, if you're a landscape contractor or want to be one, you can scroll down to the bottom and apply as a vendor. Anybody want to hit me up, find me on LinkedIn, and hit me up there, drop me a DM there, and I'll hit you back.
Okay, and I'll have some of those links in the show notes, so look for those there. Also, one question I forgot to ask, I was going to ask you up front, but just one more question. It's my podcast, so we can do this. Is for your landscape service, do you do snow removal?
Yes.
Okay, because I live in Cleveland where it snows, so.
Man, check it out.
And that's one of the trickiest people to find are the snow removal guys, because they get booked up quick.
It's a tough business, but we do offer that. We offer quotes for that, and so contractors love it. So check it out, and you'll get free quotes.
Just looking at your website, I couldn't tell. Like maybe I don't know, maybe include that on there. It just looked like it was long. I assume landscapers normally do that in the off season, whatever. But
they do, yeah.
Yeah. For me, that's important. Not for everybody, of course, but
it's there for you.
Great. All right, good to know. All right, Bryan, greenpal.com, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. All right, go there or find him on LinkedIn. Bryan, thanks so much.
Thanks, Jim.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for listening to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more, join our mailing list at jimreinventionrevolution.com. See you next time, and remember, the revolution has just begun. So dig in, embrace the process of reinvention, and start realizing the success you've always dreamed of. Hey, revolutionaries, if you enjoyed today's episode and today's guest, let them know by commenting on their Facebook page, finding their Twitter handle or Instagram feed, and letting them know you heard them on Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, and tell them what you got out of the episode, what you really liked, or how they inspired you. I know they would get a kick out of it, and will help others find the same value that you found.